Hi, I'm Lindsay Jones, voice of Ruby on the animated show RWBY. Autodesk Maya is an important tool in the creation of our show. It's the primary software used in many of our pipelines, including modeling, rigging, animating, lighting, rendering, and visual effects. Today, Rooster Teeth rigging artist Gio Coutinho will be showing us how she uses Maya for character rigging.
In this video, I'll be going over how I use post-space deformers and set-driven keys to make animating Ruby a little bit easier. If you look at Ruby's skirt, you'll see that there are a lot of tweak controls. These tweak controls allow the animators to move her skirt however they want. But it would be very inconvenient if they had to pose the skirt manually every time Ruby moved her legs. In order to help with that, I used post-space deformers at several different positions that made it so that when her legs move or her pelvis moves, her skirt conforms to the position of her legs. This way, animators can easily animate walk cycles, for example, without having to fight clipping every single time they move her legs around. A similar feature to this is also present on her belt, as well as her arms. You'll see when I turn wireframe on that this poofy part of the elbow doesn't clip through itself. And even though this could have been done with a blend shape, I actually used a set of controls to drive the shape of this elbow poof. You can see these controls over here. So in order to demo this process, I will replicate what you see on the left arm on her right arm. Let's start off by opening up our set-driven key window and loading up these two controls driven nodes. The hierarchy of these controls is very important. You'll see that here in my outliner, they both have driven nodes on top of the actual controls. This allows you to create the set-driven key animation, while also maintaining the functionality of these controls, which can help fight clipping or just help make your shapes more appealing in general. So like I said before, this is a lot like a corrective blend shape, except that you're using a control to directly influence your mesh. So once you have your driven nodes in your set-driven key window, you should also load up your driver, which in my case is called an elbow driver. This is being driven by my post-space deformer. Once you have that up, you can go ahead and key your elbow at two different positions, one being bind pose, and the next one being whatever pose you want to correct your shape at. So I'll be going up to -100. You can scrub through your timeline and have a better idea of what you might be dealing with. You can also watch the value on your post-space deformer driver node change during this animation. Once you're ready to start, you can go ahead and select your elbow driver in your set-driven key window. Make sure that your character is in bind pose. And since we're working with a right elbow, you want the elbow forward right to be your driver attribute. And then you'll select your elbow helpers and key their translates and rotates, making sure that they're all at 0 at this point. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and go to the end of your animation, and then just go ahead and mess around with these controls. My goal here is to fight the clipping that's going on with this mesh. And you'll notice that I skinned this so that only the front part of the elbow will be affected by the controls. And once you're happy, all you have to do is key both of these driven nodes. Now if you go ahead and scrub through your animation timeline, you can see that the mesh is no longer clipping with itself. What I usually like doing whenever I use this driven setup is going into my graph editor and actually setting these curves to linear. I find that usually this makes things look a little bit better. And then, as with blend shapes, you can actually change the values on your driven nodes during this animation. Then once you're happy with that, make sure to go back into your graph editor and change those curves back to linear, since Maya defaults to spline. And this is one of the ways that I use set-driven keys to make animating RWBY characters a little bit easier. Since we made this rig before we had Maya 2016 Extension 2, we had to make the pose space deformers by hand. This tool is now present in Maya, however, so you could use it for this same purpose, in order to make things even easier.